You never expect trouble to knock at your door before sunrise, especially not dressed like law enforcement. It was just past 6:30 that morning when 3 men in black polos stood on my porch sidearms on their hips, clipboards in hand, and the word Community Compliance Division stitched across their sleeves. They said they were with the HOA. But when one of them put his hand on his holster and asked to inspect my property for violations, I realized something was very wrong. They didn't know my wife Sarah used to train Navy SEALs. I remember standing there barefoot, coffee half made, still trying to process what I was seeing. The lead guy, tall sunburned neck, mirrored shades, said, "Morning, sir. We've received a complaint about your rear fence. It exceeds the HOA's approved height. Article 7B. He held out a paper for me to sign. I laughed. "Are you serious? You're the HOA, not the police." But when I looked closer, those guns weren't props. My laugh died in my throat. Then Sarah's voice came from behind me. Calm, steady. "John, don't sign anything." She walked up next to me, still in her running clothes, eyes locked on theirs. "You 3 can step off my property, now." One of them smirked. "Ma'am, this is an official HOA compliance visit." Sarah tilted her head. "Then show me your city permit number, because the HOA doesn't carry firearms or issue citations door to door." That was when the lead guy hesitated just half a second, but it told me everything. They didn't expect to be challenged. His hand twitched toward his belt, not to draw, but the reflex was there. Sarah's tone never wavered. "Step back." They muttered something into their radios, exchanged a look, and started backing down the steps. "We'll be in touch," the tall one said. When their SUV finally turned the corner, Sarah locked the door and looked at me. "They're not cops." And that wasn't a fence inspection. She was right. Later that day, we found the paper they'd left behind. No official city header, just the HOA logo and a fake signature, Karen Hernandez, the HOA president. Karen was the kind of woman who smiled like she was doing you a favor by judging you. Late 40s, always in pastel sweaters and pearl earrings, spoke like she was reading from a rule book she wrote herself. For 8 months, we'd lived quietly in Maplewood Estates. I kept to myself, paid the dues, trimmed the lawn, waved when people waved back. I didn't realize the HOA here ran like a mini dictatorship, Karen at the top, a handful of yes-men below, and everyone else afraid to make noise. But after that visit, the air changed. Within 3 days, every house on our street received a violation notice. Untrimmed hedges, wrong mailbox color, non-compliant decorations. It was ridiculous. A campaign of fear dressed up as paperwork. Neighbors stopped waving. Cars slowed down when they passed our driveway. Sarah said quietly one night, "She's isolating us. It's a tactic." I asked, "Tactic? For what?" She looked at me with that expression she gets when she's already 3 steps ahead. "Control John, HOA style." I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. But then one evening the lights went out. Power gone. Cameras dead. The whole house silent. Sarah froze mid-step. "They're testing boundaries," she whispered. I peeked through the window and saw 4 shadows moving along the fence. Black clothes. Flashlights dimmed. One was prying at the breaker box. Another scanned with a light covered by red film. It wasn't teenagers. It was coordinated. Sarah opened the drawer and pulled out her sidearm, checked the magazine like she'd done it 1,000 times. "If they breach, I handle the first 2, she said. "You get Jason upstairs." Before I could even respond, there was a faint click from the back door, the lock turning. The next 10 seconds felt like a movie shot in slow motion. The door creaked open. A man stepped inside, mask earpiece weapon holstered. Sarah moved, first grabbed his wrist, pivoted, and slammed him into the counter. He went down like a bag of bricks. The second one entered flashlight, cutting the dark, and she kicked it upward into his face before tackling him to the floor. I stood there frozen between fear and awe. My wife, calm, precise, terrifyingly efficient. By the time the sheriff's deputy showed up, the intruders were zip-tied on our kitchen floor, stripped of badges, IDs, anything that could prove who they were. The deputy gave us a tired look. "Ma'am, this some kind of HOA dispute." Sarah just handed him the fake patch one of them wore, Community Enforcement Unit. He shrugged. Private security goes too far, sometimes, he muttered and drove off. The next morning, the HOA posted a community safety notice accusing us of aggressive behavior toward association volunteers. My neighbors avoided eye contact. That's when I started to feel the weight of doubt pressing down. What if this really was my fault? Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe if I just lowered the fence, all of this would stop. I told Sarah maybe we should just comply, pay the fines, keep the peace. She looked at me like I'd grown another head. You don't feed a bully, John. You starve them. She spent the next few nights gathering evidence, emails, photos, copies of the fake violation letters. One night, she called someone named Nate, an old contact from her military days. I overheard her say, "Verify contractor license name check on the enforcement unit." A few hours later, she got the call back. Nate confirmed the compliance team was an unlicensed security group hired personally by Karen Hernandez through a private company she controlled. Illegal from top to bottom. That was the breaking point. Sarah said they wanted fear. Let's give them exposure instead. We set up a camera mic in the living room and baited them. Sarah replied to the HOA email saying we'd refused compliance and were considering legal action. 2 days later, Karen herself showed up at our door. She was all smiles. "Oh, Sarah, this is all a big misunderstanding. The volunteers just got overzealous." Sarah crossed her arms. "Volunteers with guns." Karen laughed, that fake soft laugh that sounded rehearsed. "They're community safety officers, dear. We just want to keep everyone secure." I'll never forget what Sarah said next. If security means impersonating police and breaking into homes, maybe the community's not the one that's unsafe. Karen's smile faltered for the first time. "Careful, Mrs. McMichael," she said quietly. "Non-compliance can have consequences." Sarah just stared at her. So can breaking the law. When Karen left, Sarah turned to me. "We've got her voice, her threat, and her fingerprints all over this." She pressed stop on the recorder. Every word was there. The HOA doubled down anyway. They sent a formal summons and emergency disciplinary hearing to determine our membership status. Translation, they were trying to kick us out. Sarah didn't flinch. "Good," she said. "Let's end it in front of everyone." The meeting was held in the community center, a beige concrete box that smelled like old carpet and fake civility. When we walked in, the room was packed. Neighbors, board members, a local news crew that Karen had conveniently invited. She sat at the front, pastel suit pearls clipboard in hand, eyes sharp as a hawk pretending to be a dove. She started smooth, rehearsed. "We're here to discuss a resident's repeated violations and their unfortunate confrontation with HOA personnel. Our goal is peace, not punishment." People murmured. I could feel eyes on the back of my neck. Sarah stood beside me, calm as ever. Karen pointed her pen like a weapon. "Mrs. McMichael, would you like to explain why you assaulted 2 of our volunteers?" Sarah took 1 step forward. Gladly. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small USB drive, and held it up, because they weren't volunteers. They were trespassers. She walked to the projector, plugged it in, and pressed play. Karen's own voice filled the room, clear as a bell. "If they don't comply, use the compliance team. Record everything so we can claim self-defense if it goes south." The crowd went silent. Then the whispers started. "Is that her?" "That's Karen's voice." She said, "Use force." Karen shot up, face pale. This is fabricated," she stammered. Sarah folded her arms. "Metadata says otherwise. Time-stamped, routed from your HOA email account." A man from the back row, Mr. Geller, retired, postmaster, stood up. "Karen, you told us these were volunteers. You said the McMichaels attacked them." Karen's voice cracked. I followed procedure." Sarah stepped closer. "Whose procedure? The HOA's or yours?" That's when the news reporter turned his camera toward Karen. She froze like a deer in headlights. The room erupted, neighbors shouting, board members whispering frantically. Karen tried to grab her folder papers, spilling everywhere. "This meeting is adjourned," she snapped, but no one listened. Sarah unplugged the projector, turned to me, and whispered, "We're done here." 2 weeks later, the local news ran the headline, "HOA President arrested for hiring fake cops to enforce rules. The footage went viral. Karen's voice, her threats, her face, as the truth hit her like a freight train. The state revoked the HOA's license. The private security company was fined into oblivion. Neighbors started talking to us again. Some apologized. Others avoided us out of shame. I didn't care either way. The fence stayed. The house stayed. We stayed. That night, Sarah and I sat on the porch. For the first time in months, the air felt quiet. Not the tense kind of quiet, just peace. I looked at her and said, "You think she'll ever understand what she did?" Sarah sipped her coffee. People like her don't learn. They get replaced. She looked at the fence, the same one that started all this, and smiled faintly. Funny, isn't it? They tried to break into our home over a few extra inches of wood, and now the whole HOA's collapsed. I nodded. Guess they picked the wrong house. There was a long pause before Sarah said something I'll never forget. You don't fight tyranny by shouting louder. You fight it by knowing the rules better than the tyrant. And that's exactly what she did. Lesson. When power hides behind the word safety, make sure you know where the line of law really stands, because that's where freedom begins.